We are soaking up the last few rays of summer, trying to spend as much time as we can outside. I want to take you along with me for a day in the life of our homeschool. I'm going to be showing you some of the fall picture books that I like to read to my kids, and I want to talk to you about persevering in motherhood. Remembering this verse from Philippians, "One thing I do, forgetting what lies behind, straining forward to what lies ahead, I press on towards the goal for the prize of the upward call of God in Christ Jesus." The colors this time of year are really just so vibrant. I don't want to miss any of it. We've been spending as much time as we can outside, and sometimes I'll find my kids out playing by themselves right when it's about time for us to do a lesson, or in the afternoon when I've laid my little ones down and it's time for me to do afternoon reading with them. And it can be really tempting to interrupt their play and bring them inside, but I know that these days are ending. Now, as a younger homeschool mom, I probably would have interrupted their play, brought them in so we could do our read aloud, get everything checked off our list for the day. But having a couple years under our belt, this is something I no longer do. Especially in the fall when the days are so beautiful like this, I just let them play. I know that at some point their imaginary world is going to come to an end. They're going to get bored of it and be ready to move on to the next thing. And I try to take advantage of that time to sit down, to stop what I'm doing and read with them. Also, I know that winter is coming. We're all going to be inside and there's going to be a lot more time for bookwork. So I don't stress when they're outside playing during what would normally be our lesson time or read aloud time in the afternoon. If this is your first time on my channel, my name is Sherry. I'm a homeschooling mom to 10 kids. Our oldest is graduated. We have 7 in school this year: 11th, 10th, 8th, 6th, 4th, 2nd, 1st, and then we have a 3-year-old and a 19-month-old. This is our 15th year of homeschooling. I love coming on here every week, encouraging other moms to just come right alongside us in whatever we're doing in our home. Just knowing that there's someone out there doing the same thing as you, I think, is just really encouraging. I also write over on the blog, ourlifehomeschooling.com, where you can find a ton of resources for your homeschool. I wanted to share with you a little bit of our life from last week in hopes to encourage you to persevere as a mom, to persevere in homeschooling, in the call that God's put on your life. Last week, we had a couple sick kiddos, and it was something that just kind of dragged out. Our oldest son had it for a while, and then slowly other kids started getting it. When you have a lot of kids, sometimes it seems like a sickness, a virus, can just drag on for a couple weeks till it goes through everyone. Well, at the very last, my husband got it. And when this happens, this feels like a whole new low because he is my partner. We work together on everything. And when he's down, especially after I've just been serving and meeting needs constantly for a couple days in a row, it can just get really discouraging. Of course, as a mom of almost 20 years now, our oldest son is almost 20, I've been through this before. This isn't our first time. We've been through sicknesses, different struggles in homeschooling, siblings fighting, sicknesses, pregnancies, infants, sleepless nights, moving, my husband's job having different challenges. This isn't the first time we've been through something difficult, but when you're in the middle of some challenging days, it can be so easy to become short-sighted. And that's exactly what happened to me on this last week. It had been just 2 or 3 days of constant needs from sunup to sundown, and it was exhausting. And then finally my husband got sick. And at that moment, I just became really discouraged. And I'm sure that there are many who can relate to this. And in this moment, it wasn't that I quit or gave up as a mom. I was still walking around, meeting everyone's needs, making the next meal, cleaning up. But I can get very short-sighted and totally lose and forget the calling God has on my life. And we enjoy the high moments, the successes, when we can see the fruit of our work. But when we're in these days where we're just struggling through from one challenge to the next, it's hard to remember the long game. And inwardly, we can very easily become discouraged and just kind of give up, in a sense. Not that we're giving up what we're doing, but just our heart's not in it anymore. This is something I especially remember struggling with more when my kids were all younger, just easily becoming discouraged from all the menial work, doing dishes, making meals, cleaning up, doing lessons. It took a lot more foundational work back then. It reminds me of a quote, something similar to everybody wants to save the world, but nobody wants to do the dishes. I read a book once by Chuck Swindoll called Improving Your Serve, and he gave a similar analogy, just talking about the beauty of servanthood. But then he said, what if God called you to serve in a place where nobody saw and nobody knew? I think motherhood is like that sometimes, and we have to remind ourselves continually of the eternal perspective. One day, after cleaning up the lunch dishes and putting my little ones to bed, I came outside to see that my kids had made this adorable little play village. They made these handmade sheds out of sticks for each of their animals. They set them all up. They were out here doing this for probably 45 minutes, an hour, and I just love seeing their creativity. Now, on this day, for our afternoon read aloud, we did some work on Pennsylvania history. I recently did a blog post on the best Pennsylvania history resources that I found. I made a whole list of them. I was so excited when I found all these. I had to put it together in a blog post. If you head over to Our Life Homeschooling, you can find all the chapter books, the curriculum that I found. And I am starting with Keystones of Pennsylvania. This is by Susan Kemmerer. This has been just a fun little unit study to go through. I don't use everything in the curriculum. The curriculum is a tool for me. I don't like to be a slave to it. So I just kind of pick and choose what I really like. One of the things I like best are the chapter books that she suggests, and I'll get to that a little bit later. We started one of her chapter books for Pennsylvania history. It's one I've done with my kids before and really love. Back to persevering in motherhood and homeschooling. I thought of one practical tip that has really helped me over the years when I get to that point where I've just been meeting needs constantly, some mornings going from one emergency to the next, and you just get so depleted. And this comes from the book of Mark. If you want to do a study on someone who is constantly surrounded by needy people, do a study on Jesus, specifically from the book of Mark. I did a video on this. I'm going to link it for you. Two things that I've observed that Jesus did, someone who was constantly surrounded by people. First, he got away to be alone with his Father, so he sent the crowds away. And as a mom, this can mean maybe going out for a cup of coffee, going for a walk. Maybe you're not able to do that. Maybe you just need to put all the kids down for some kind of quiet time and go into your room and be by yourself for a little bit. But we need to follow his example. He would get away from the crowds, he sent them home, and he would get alone to pray with his Father. And the second thing he did that I observed is after he was alone and spent time praying, then he would go back and pour himself into the work God had called him to do. So if you need something practical to latch onto, if you're in a moment of overwhelm, I challenge you to get away, to be alone by yourself, do something you enjoy, Spend time reading the Word, spend time in prayer, and then go back. You will feel refreshed and renewed when you get a little break. Go back and pour your life into the job that God's given you to do. The book that I mentioned earlier that I'm reading is Benjamin West and His Cat Grimalkin. This is for Pennsylvania history, but really if you want to even just do American history, this is a wonderful book. I read this to my older kids, but these are my younger kids and they haven't heard this story. Benjamin West is called the father of American painting. He was born into a Quaker family, and the Quakers discouraged making any kind of images. But he loved to paint, so he would go out into the woods and find anything he could to make color and to do sketches. And he finds an interesting paintbrush in his cat Grimalkin. My kids just love this story. I can't wait to read it to my younger ones. During our read aloud, I let my kids work on anything they want to as long as it's pretty quiet. So my daughter Julia is working on crocheting this string. I'm not sure what she's doing with it. And then my 3-year-old has a crochet hook and what looks to be some kind of braided thread, and she thinks she's crocheting, which is totally fine with me. I think it's really sweet. I did a little searching for some great books for fall. I have some that were already on my list, but as I went to the library and was looking for the best ones, I of course put a blog post together on our favorite fall read aloud picture books. I love what I found. The Leaf Man, this one is really adorable. It's a great one for a nature hike. You can take the kids out, and in this book they show what each of the different leaves are, how to identify them, and then they also make different pictures like a chicken or a cow, and this is one that I think will be really fun to do with the kids. Also, my daughter Holland loves the Mrs. Millie books. Maybe some people would consider these twaddle, but she loves them. She thinks it's so funny, all the things that Mrs. Millie says wrong. And when I correct her, or when the children correct her, it's just hilarious for her. So that is one that I also included in this list. Back to persevering in motherhood. Why do moms give in so easily? Why do we get discouraged so quickly? I think it's because we're short-sighted. We fail to see the eternal importance of the work we're doing with our family. Building up your home, raising the next generation, keeping a tidy house, this requires a lot of work. It's work that the world often considers a waste of time. But we know as Christians that in the kingdom of Christ, the highest position you can have is that of a servant. We have such an incredible opportunity as moms to give our kids something that is hard to find anywhere else. To give them a biblical worldview, to give them an individualized education, to be present, to teach them life skills. We have incredible influence right at our fingertips, and I, for one, by the grace of God, don't want to miss it. Moms, let's look ahead. Let's forget what's behind. Let's strain forward to what's ahead. Let's press on toward the goal for the prize of the upward call of God in Christ Jesus. We finished off our week by taking the afternoon off and going to the local farmers market with the kids. My husband got home, and it was just a really fun outing. Thank you for following along with us this week. If you liked this video, I encourage you to watch the video I did a few weeks ago, a day in the life video. What is it like to be homeschooled? And I talk about perceptions in homeschooling. I do one video a week on homeschooling encouragement for everyday moms. I'll see you next week.